to Just Another Stitch. For those that don't know me, my name is Connie, and today I'm going to show you how to knit in the round. And knitting in the round, you are working a sphere, basically a circle. And you typically knit in the round when you're making beanies, socks. You tend to knit in the round. If you're making some form of amigurumi, that's usually when you tend to knit in the round. So the supplies you will need for today's tutorial, you will need circular knitting needles. Now your knitting needles may vary from mine, but what I'm using Knit Picks interchangeable short knitting needles. I find the short needles work a lot better when working in the round. When I first started knitting beanies, I used the long knitting needles, and it was hard to get the motion, getting my stitches around, because you want room to work your stitches. So I prefer the short needles. Now, if you measure my knitting needles from the point of one needle to the point of the other needle, it measures almost 15 inches long. The cord in the middle measures about 8 inches. And I'm using 5.5 millimeter knitting needles for today's tutorial. Then you will need a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the round. I would recommend a 4-weight yarn. I'm using Premier anti-pilling yarn, which is a 4-weight. And I believe the colorway is Seafoam for the yarn I'm using. All right, so we will be doing the long tail cast on method for today's tutorial. If you're not familiar with this cast on method, I do have a tutorial. I'll put the link in the description box. Some of y'all may need more practice on casting on. Now, when it comes to knitting in the round, you can use other cast on methods too. Patterns typically will tell you what cast on method they want you to use. So make sure you pay attention to that, because if a pattern tells you a certain cast on method, that's the cast on method you need to do for that pattern. But if it don't specify, you can typically use whatever cast on method you want to use. Long tail tends to be the most common method. All right, so with the long tail, you need to leave a long tail. All right. All right, you want to start off by making your slip knot. Put it on your knitting needle. And tighten it. Okay, so with the long tail cast on method, your slip knot counts as your first stitch. Now, I'm going to be casting on 80 stitches. Based on the knitting needles you use, you may need to cast on more stitches than what I am. You want to have enough room that you can move around, where if it feels too tight, you'll need to cast on more stitches. But I'm doing 80, but the cast on doesn't really matter for the tutorial purpose, as long as you have room to work your stitches. All right. Okay, so we already have our first stitch casted on. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5. And just keep casting on until you have enough stitches casted on. And I'm going to be doing 80 stitches for my cast on method. And we'll meet back up once you have enough stitches. Okay, you should have your stitches casted on. Now you want to put the needle with the working yarn connected on the right side. All right. So at this point, you want to make sure you put all your stitches facing the same direction in the center. You do not want your stitches to be twisted. Where when I say twisted, this is what I'm talking about. Because it will affect your work. And when I first started learning how to knit beanies, I've made a few where I twisted the brim. You don't want that. So make sure everything faces the same direction in the inside. Like this. You see how it's all facing in? That's what you want. All right. So you want to take your stitches and push them close to the tip of the needle, but you don't want them to fall off the needle. Okay. So this is how you want it. Because you have to connect everything. So you want it all the way around. And when you're working your first round, which we're about to do, make sure nothing twists on you, because sometimes that can happen. All right, so we're just going to make this simple, and we're just going to do knit stitches. So go into that first stitch. Now for the first stitch, you're going to grab your working yarn and your tail. Wrap both of them around the right needle and finish working your knit stitch. And if you need practice on the knit stitch, I have a tutorial for that, and I will link that in the description box for you. All right. So your first stitch the stitch you just worked, it actually looks like it's 2 stitches, but it's 1 stitch. I put my stitch marker through both of those loops. That way it marks the beginning of the round, and you know that this is 1 stitch. All right. All right, now at this point, make sure you're grabbing your working yarn, the yarn that connects to your skein. You do not want to be using your tail. Make sure it's what's connected to your skein. And we just continue to do knit stitches. Just like that. And you're just going to knit all the way around. See, this is why I said you want to have enough stitches so that you can easily work them. All right, so keep doing your knit stitches, and we're going to meet back up right before you get to the stitch with the stitch marker. So we'll meet back up there. Okay, you are at the end of the first round, and if you notice, the next stitch on your left needle is the stitch with the stitch marker. This is the first stitch of the round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my stitch marker. And then I just put it on my knitting needle, my right needle, like that. Now, I'm going to give this a tug, the end piece, because we want everything to be nice and snug here. Okay, so we're going through both those loops. So it's going to look like it's 2 stitches, but it's your first stitch. All right, and you just do a knit stitch. And when you finish the stitch, give your end piece another tug, because you want this nice and snug. And that's how you connect it in the round. And you just continue to do your knit stitches all the way around, just like this. And when you get to the end of the round, right before the stitch marker, that's where we'll meet back up. Okay, we are at the end of round 2, so you want to slip your stitch marker over. And then for round 3, you just continue with your knit stitches. And you just do the same thing on your future rounds. And that's all there is to knitting in the round. One thing I do want to point out is the side of your work that faces you, that is the front side of your work. Now if you turn it over, that would be the wrong side. And when you knit in the round, you never turn, so the right side is always facing you. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed today's tutorial. I want to hear how your knitting journey is going. Let me know in the comments. I do have a beginner knit playlist for all my beginner knitting tutorials. I will be adding more tutorials to that playlist, and I'll put the link for it in the description box down below. If you have any requests for topics you want me to cover in upcoming beginner knit videos, just let me know. Either let me know in the comments down below, or you can send me an email to justanotherstitch2020@gmail.com. So now it is time to leave the key word. This is for a giveaway that I'm doing for the month of March of the year 2025. Now, when you come across this tutorial, this giveaway may no longer be going on. But as I am filming this, this is the current giveaway that I'm doing. So I'm going to pick 5 people randomly, and each of those 5 people will get 5 extra entries into March's giveaway, Spring is in the Air. So for a chance to get extra entries, have the keyword "be" in your comments down below. "Be" is the keyword, and I will pick 5 people randomly. Each of those 5 people will get 5 extra entries into Spring is in the Air giveaway. So I hope everyone is having a fabulous yarny day. Bye, everyone.